Welcome to Thought Grid. Like and subscribe for more chilling stories. Tonight, we delve into the chilling depths of the Backrooms, a liminal space rumored to exist just beyond the fabric of our reality. These are not mere urban legends. These are accounts from those who claim to have stumbled into its infinite, unsettling expanse and lived to tell the tale. Prepare yourselves, for what you are about to hear may just change the way you perceive the world around you. The true horror of the Backrooms lies not just in its endless, disorienting corridors, but in the profound sense of isolation and the unspeakable entities that lurk within its sickly, yellow walls. These are the stories of those who fell through the cracks and what they found waiting for them on the other side. Story 1. The Hum and the Hound. Our first encounter comes from a user named No Clipping Through Reality, a self-proclaimed urban explorer who had always scoffed at the idea of the Backrooms. He spent his weekends venturing into abandoned buildings, forgotten tunnels, and derelict factories, seeking the thrill of discovery and the quiet solitude of decay. He considered himself grounded in reality, a pragmatist who believed only in what he could see, touch, and measure. That belief was shattered one rainy Tuesday afternoon. He was exploring an old, abandoned office building on the outskirts of his city, a place slated for demolition. The air was thick with dust and the smell of mildew, and the only sounds were the drip of water from a leaky pipe and the distant rumble of thunder. He was in what appeared to be a former server room, a vast empty space with rows of disconnected power conduits snaking across the floor like dead mechanical snakes. He was taking photos, documenting the peeling paint and the shattered windows, when he felt a strange tremor beneath his feet. It wasn't an earthquake, it was something far more subtle, a low, resonant vibration that seemed to emanate from the very foundations of the building. Then came the hum. It was a deep, guttural thrum, like 1,000 industrial refrigerators running simultaneously, but it wasn't coming from any visible source. It seemed to be everywhere and nowhere at once, a pervasive sound that vibrated in his teeth and rattled his bones. He checked his phone, but there was no signal. His flashlight flickered, then died, plunging him into near-total darkness. Panic, cold and sharp, began to prickle at the edges of his composure. He fumbled for his backup light, his heart hammering against his ribs. When the beam finally cut through the gloom, he found himself in a different place. The server room was gone. In its place was an endless expanse of sickly yellow walls, stained with what looked like ancient water damage. The fluorescent lights above hummed with an unnatural intensity, casting long, distorted shadows. The air was heavy, stagnant, and smelled faintly of damp carpet and something else, something metallic and acrid. He was in level 0, the infamous first level of the Backrooms. The hum was deafening now, a constant pressure against his eardrums. He tried to retrace his steps, but every corridor looked identical. The walls were a monotonous, nauseating yellow, the carpet a damp, sickly brown. He walked for what felt like hours, his sense of direction completely gone. The hum intensified, sometimes fading, sometimes surging, as if the very air was breathing. He started to feel a profound sense of dread, a primal fear that he was not alone. He kept telling himself it was just his imagination, a trick of the mind brought on by exhaustion and fear. Then he heard it, a low growl, deep and resonant, that seemed to vibrate through the floorboards. It wasn't human, and it wasn't animal in any way he recognized. It was a sound of pure, predatory hunger. He froze, his breath catching in his throat. The hum seemed to quiet slightly, as if even the environment was holding its breath. He slowly turned his head, his flashlight beam trembling. In the distance, at the end of a long, identical corridor, he saw it. A hulking, shadowy figure, moving on all fours, its silhouette distorted by the flickering fluorescent lights. It was massive, far larger than any dog or wolf, and its movements were unnaturally fluid, almost slithering. He didn't wait. He turned and ran, the growls echoing behind him, closer now. He ran until his lungs burned and his legs ached, weaving through the endless corridors, the yellow walls blurring into a nauseating streak. He could hear the creature gaining on him, its heavy thuds on the damp carpet growing louder, punctuated by those terrifying growls. He stumbled, falling to his knees, his flashlight skittering across the floor. He scrambled to retrieve it, his heart pounding like a drum against his ribs. When he looked up, the creature was there, just meters away, its eyes glowing with an eerie, malevolent light. He couldn't make out its features, only its immense size and the terrifying, guttural sounds it emitted. He closed his eyes, bracing for the inevitable. But then, just as the creature lunged, the world seemed to twist. The hum surged to an unbearable crescendo, and he felt a sensation like falling, a disorienting lurch that made his stomach churn. When he opened his eyes, he was back in the abandoned server room, lying on the dusty floor, his flashlight still clutched in his hand. The rain was still drumming against the roof, and the distant thunder rumbled. The hum was gone. The creature was gone. He scrambled to his feet, his body trembling, and fled the building, never looking back. He never went urban exploring again, and to this day, the color yellow fills him with an inexplicable dread. Story 2. The Level of Smiles. Our second account comes from a young woman named Sarah, a graphic designer who found herself in the backrooms through a far more mundane, yet equally terrifying, route. Sarah was working late one night, engrossed in a complex project when her computer crashed. Frustrated, she decided to take a short break and stretch her legs. She walked out of her office, intending to grab a coffee from the break room. The office building was usually bustling, but at this hour, it was eerily quiet. The fluorescent lights hummed softly, and the only sound was the distant whir of the air conditioning. As she walked down the familiar corridor, she noticed something was off. The hallway seemed longer, the doors to the offices slightly different. She brushed it off as fatigue, attributing it to her long hours. But then she noticed the wallpaper. It was a cheerful, almost childlike pattern of smiling faces, each one identical, each one with wide, unblinking eyes and a disturbingly wide grin. She had never seen this wallpaper in her office building before. A prickle of unease began to crawl up her spine. She tried to turn back, but the corridor behind her had vanished, replaced by more of the smiling wallpaper. Panic began to set in. She tried the door to what should have been her office, but it was locked. Every door she tried was locked. The air grew heavy, and the silence became oppressive. The smiling faces on the wallpaper seemed to watch her, their grins widening, their eyes following her every move. She was in Level Fun, a place that promised joy but delivered only terror. She walked for what felt like an eternity, the endless corridors lined with the smiling faces. The silence was broken only by her own ragged breathing and the occasional faint sound of distant, distorted laughter. It was a high-pitched, childish giggle that seemed to echo from everywhere and nowhere. She tried to ignore it, tried to rationalize it, but the laughter grew louder, more insistent, more malevolent. She started to run, desperate to escape the suffocating cheerfulness and the unsettling laughter. She ran until she collapsed, her legs burning, her lungs aching. The smiling faces seemed to press in on her, their grins mocking her despair. The laughter was all around her now, a cacophony of distorted, childish glee. She huddled in a corner, covering her ears, trying to block out the terrifying sounds. She felt a cold touch on her shoulder and looked up. Standing over her was a figure, tall and gaunt, its face obscured by a featureless, white mask with a crudely drawn, exaggerated smile. It held a balloon in one hand, and its head was tilted at an unnatural angle. It was a partygoer, one of the most feared entities of Level Fun. Sarah screamed, a raw, primal sound that was swallowed by the echoing laughter. She scrambled away, crawling on her hands and knees, the partygoer slowly advancing, its head still tilted, its masked smile seeming to grow wider. She could feel its cold breath on her neck, hear the soft rustle of its clothes. Just as it reached for her, she saw a flicker of light, a brief, almost imperceptible shimmer in the yellow wallpaper. Desperate, she lunged towards it, pushing through the seemingly solid wall. She felt a sensation like falling, a brief moment of disorientation, and then she was back in her office building, lying on the floor of the break room, a half-empty coffee cup shattered beside her. The cheerful wallpaper was gone, replaced by the familiar, sterile white walls of her office. The laughter was gone, but the memory of those smiling faces and the chilling, distorted laughter would haunt her dreams for years to come. Story 3. The Glitch in the Matrix. Our final story comes from a software developer named Mark, a man who spent his life immersed in code and logic. He was a skeptic, a firm believer that everything could be explained by algorithms and data. The concept of the Backrooms was, to him, nothing more than an elaborate creepypasta, a well-crafted piece of internet fiction. That was until his reality began to glitch. It started subtly. A flickering light in his apartment that wasn't a faulty bulb. A momentary distortion in his reflection in the mirror. A word on a street sign that seemed to shift and change before his eyes. He dismissed them as optical illusions, stress, or simply his imagination playing tricks on him. But the glitches became more frequent, more pronounced. Objects would momentarily disappear and reappear. Sounds would cut out, then return with a jarring echo. The world around him felt less solid, more like a poorly rendered simulation. One evening, he was walking home from work, lost in thought, when the entire street seemed to shimmer. The buildings around him elongated, their textures blurring. The sky turned a sickly green, and the familiar sounds of the city warped into a cacophony of distorted static. He felt a profound sense of wrongness, a terrifying realization that the world he knew was unraveling around him. He was in level -1, a corrupted, glitching version of reality, a place where the rules of physics were mere suggestions. He tried to run, but his legs felt heavy, as if he were moving through thick syrup. The ground beneath him rippled like water, and the buildings around him twisted and contorted. He saw figures in the distance, their forms flickering in and out of existence, their movements jerky and unnatural. They were wanderers, entities that were once human but had been corrupted by the glitching reality of level -1. They moved with a disturbing, almost robotic precision, their faces blank, their eyes empty. He tried to call for help, but his voice came out as a distorted, garbled mess. The air itself seemed to crackle with static when the hum he had heard about in online forums was now a piercing, high-pitched whine that threatened to shatter his eardrums. He saw a doorway, shimmering and unstable, and instinctively lunged towards it, hoping it would lead him back to his own reality. As he passed through, he felt a sensation like being pulled apart and reassembled, a terrifying, agonizing process that lasted only a second, but felt like an eternity. When he opened his eyes, he was back on his street, the buildings solid, the sky blue, the sounds of the city normal. The glitches were gone, the wanderers were gone. He was back in his own reality, but he was forever changed. He no longer dismissed the stories of the Backrooms as mere fiction. He knew, with a terrifying certainty, that there were cracks in reality, places where the world could unravel, and that he had, for a brief, horrifying moment, fallen through one of them. He now lives with a constant, low-level anxiety, always checking for the subtle signs of a glitch, always wondering when the fabric of his reality might fray again. The Backrooms had shown him that the world was not as solid as he believed, and that some horrors exist beyond the realm of logic and reason.